Hi, and welcome back to PMBOK 5th edition. In this module, we will be discussing project procurement management. It consists of managing all of the processes necessary to purchase or acquire products, services, or results needed from outside the project team. Whether the project team buys products from outside its organization or orders them through its organization's own warehouse, these activities are part of project procurement management. I will be covering each of the processes in detail, including plan procurement management, conduct procurements, control procurements, and close procurements. So let's get started. Project procurement management uses processes that involve agreements such as contracts, which are legal documents between a buyer and a seller. Many organizations document the policies and procedures defining their procurement rules and specifying who has authority to sign and administer such agreements on behalf of the organization. Let's say that Company A has a project which has multiple contracts running simultaneously, such as contracts for phone service, tablets, and business outsourcing. Project procurement management is responsible for managing each of these contracts through its life cycle, which may end during any phase of the larger project life cycle. Project procurement management is conducted within the perspective of the buyer-seller relationship. We have in project procurement management. The first process we have in project procurement management is plan procurement management. This can be defined as a process of documenting project purchasing decisions, specifying the approach, and identifying potential sellers. It identifies those project needs which can best be or must be met by acquiring products, services, or results outside of the project organization or project team. The key inputs in this process include the project management plan, requirements documentation, and the risk register, which provides a list of the risks along with the results of risk analysis and risk response planning. The project schedule is another key input which contains information on required timelines or mandated deliverable dates. Other inputs in this process include activity resource requirements, activity cost estimates, the stakeholder register, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. Along with the other aids, the organizational process assets can provide formal procurement policies, procedures, and guidelines which will direct and guide our efforts to manage procurements on the project. Make or buy analysis is a tool and technique in the plan procurement management process used to determine whether particular work can best be accomplished by the project team and its organization or should be purchased from outside sources. Other tools and techniques used in this process include expert judgment, market research, and meetings. In regards to market research, things such as conducting internet research about vendors and their capabilities, as well as finding testimonials from businesses that have used them can be extremely valuable. Documented project procurement approaches, procedures, and policies can benefit an organization by expediting decision-making and identifying potential sellers. Using the various inputs and tools and techniques can help you to determine whether to acquire outside support, and if so, what to acquire, how to acquire it, how much is needed, and when to acquire it. Expedited and accurate decisions save time and money. When we talk about outputs in this process, we have the procurement management plan, which is a component of the project management plan that describes how a project team will acquire goods and services from outside the performing organization. This plan is really a strategy document that focuses on how we are going to manage the procurement process, including how we will select vendors, the types of contracts we will use, and what criteria will be used to evaluate the vendors. The Procurement Statement of Work, or SOW, describes a procurement item in sufficient detail to allow prospective sellers to determine if they are capable of providing the products, services, or results. The procurement documents created in this process are used to solicit proposals, bids, quotes, information, and so on from prospective sellers. Procurement documents include a description of the required response form, the SOW, and contractual provisions such as the non-disclosure agreement. Source selection criteria are often included as part of the procurement documents. These are developed and used to rate seller proposals and can be objective or subjective. For example, on our project, we may want to evaluate all vendors according to price, length of time in business, technical capability, and experience in similar fields. Other necessary and important outputs include the make or buy decisions themselves, change requests, and project document updates. The second process in this module is conduct procurements. This is the process of obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. Essentially, we are providing a proposal to the vendors which outlines the scope of work needed, holding vendor conferences, evaluating, and then selecting vendors to do the work. Almost all of the outputs from the prior process are needed in this process. The key inputs include the procurement management plan, which describes how the procurement processes will be managed from developing procurement documentation through contract closure. Procurement documents, source selection criteria, and seller proposals are also key inputs that are used by an evaluation team to review and then select one or more qualified sellers. Other necessary inputs include project documents, make or buy decisions, procurement statement of work, and organizational process assets. Two of the tools and techniques we use in this process are bidder conferences, which refers to the meetings between the buyer and all prospective sellers prior to submission of a proposal, and proposal evaluation techniques, with which a formal evaluation review process will be defined for complex procurements by the buyer's procurement policies. Other essential tools and techniques are independent estimates, expert judgment, advertising, analytical techniques, and procurement negotiations. Note that procurement negotiations are more of an activity whereby the goal is to reach a contractual agreement between the buyer and the seller. The most important outputs of this process are the procurement agreement. Another key output is selected sellers, which refers to the sellers that have been selected to provide the goods or perform the services. Additional outputs include resource calendars that show when the vendors will be available, change requests, project management plan updates, and project document updates. Organizations can benefit from this process by being able to select one or more sellers who are qualified to perform the work at the cost, quality, and timeliness that contribute most to project success. The third process of project procurement management is control procurements. We can define this process as managing procurement relationships, monitoring contract performance, and making changes and corrections as needed. It's really about ensuring that the agreed upon work is delivered as specified. We should compare the deliverables to the scope baseline to ensure that the requirements have been met and seek to avoid scope creep. The key inputs include the project management plan, which includes the scope baseline as well as the procurement management plan that describes how the procurement processes will be managed from developing procurement documentation through contract closure. Also, procurement documents, which contains complete supporting records for administration of the procurement processes. Some additional inputs are as follows: agreements between the parties, approved change requests, work performance requests such as reports from the vendor showing what's been completed, and finally work performance data. The control procurements process includes the following key tools and techniques. Contract change control system, which defines the process by which the procurement can be modified. Procurement performance reviews of the vendor's progress. Inspections and audits. Performance reporting provided by the vendor so we can compare it to the agreed upon requirements. Payment systems, claims administration, and records management system where we can manage the contract and any related procurement documentation that results from this process. The key outputs produced in this process are the work performance information, including information on deliverable status, such as what's been completed and what's in progress, change requests, project management plan updates, project document updates, and organizational process asset updates. Both the buyer and the seller will control the procurement contract for similar purposes. Each is required to ensure that both parties meet their contractual obligations and that their own legal rights are protected. The legal nature of the contractual relationship makes it imperative that the project management team is aware of the legal implications of actions taken when controlling any procurement. Another important point to note is that this process has a financial management component that involves monitoring payments to the seller. Monitoring involves performance reviews to measure a seller's competency for performing according to the requirements of the contract. This ensures that payment terms defined within the contract are met and that seller compensation is linked to seller progress, as defined in the contract. One of the principal concerns when making payments to suppliers is that there is a close relationship between payments made and work accomplished. The concluding process in procurement management knowledge area is closed procurements. Closed procurements is the process of completing each project procurement. It supports the closed project or phase process since it involves verification that all work and deliverables were acceptable. This process involves administrative activities such as finalizing open claims, updating records, and archiving information for future use. Essentially, this process is really about closing all the procurement processes for the project or a phase of the project. The key inputs in this process include the project management plan, which contains the procurement management plan, and it provides the details and guidelines for closing out procurements. Procurement documents include any and all procurement documentation, and it should be collected, indexed, and filed to close the contract. The key tools and techniques that will be helpful in this process are procurement audits, procurement negotiations, and the records management system. For procurement audits, we should conduct an end-to-end review of the procurement processes and assess what went well and identify any areas for improvement, either on this project or on any future projects. Consider this a lessons learned exercise. We also settle and close out any outstanding payments, deliverables, and resolve any disputes by way of procurement negotiations. Finally, we will archive all associated procurement documents in something we officially call a records management system. The two key outputs in this process are closed procurements and organizational process asset updates. In closed procurements, the buyer informs the seller, usually in writing, that the contract has been accepted or rejected. In case of rejection, the contract should specify how to address this. Any and all documentation should become part of what we call organizational process asset updates and would include the procurement file, deliverable acceptance, and of course, your lessons learned documentation with recommendations on different approaches or process improvement ideas for future projects. Is closed procurement management simple compared to other processes in the project procurement management knowledge area? Well, it does have fewer inputs, uses fewer tools and techniques, and produces fewer outputs. Yet it is a crucial process that supports the closed project or phase process by ensuring contractual agreements are completed or terminated. The legal implications of ending a contract well can be enormous. The key benefit of this process is that it documents agreements and archives related documentation for future reference. I hope you have enjoyed learning about project procurement management, and I'll see you in the next video where we will begin our discussion of project stakeholder management. Thanks for watching.